Hello and welcome to Ode to Games. I'm Kevin Valley, joined alongside Logan Plant. How you doing, Logan?
Good, Kev. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We've also got
You
Zach
played
Ross here.
Yakuza.
Yes, Zach Ross is also here. He's not playing
I'm here.
Yakuza.
He's
I'm
not.
not currently, but I will be at some point.
When is some point? I'm
I don't
curious.
know. I'm in a game coma after Ghost of Tsushima, so I don't know if I'm gonna play it before or after Cyberpunk. It's really up in the air right now.
Yeah, that's a decision. You got what? Three
Three
weeks?
weeks?
3 weeks?
Yeah, three
Three,
weeks.
yep.
3 weeks until
Because
Cyberpunk.
because it depends on when I'm feeling it. Because I don't want to start it and then put it down and then pick up Cyberpunk. So if I'm
Yeah,
not confident I can finish it before the time Cyberpunk comes out, I'm probably just gonna hold off.
yeah, that's dangerous. You don't wanna set that game down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing Yakuza the last couple of days. It finally showed up. I'm late to the party. I'm sure that everybody's already finished the game already. It's been out for like a week. Everyone's already done.
Except for me.
except for Zach. You're in the same boat. Yeah, so I put in about 5.5 hours over the last 2 days, and it's mainly been story. Like the first 3 hours was basically just story because you have to go through the entire backstory, the whole 18 years prior. Because of course, just like how it was in the original Yakuza, you've got a guy who serves about 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't do because he's taking the fall for somebody else. It's the same thing that we saw from the original, so they had to set that up over the first 3 hours. But it's definitely a much bigger scale game in terms of story than that original game was. Because that original game was about Kiryu and Nishiki and that whole thing, and here it's about basically the entire Omi Alliance and the Tojo clan, the clans from the previous game, and that whole thing, and their dynamic in Kamurocho. It's much higher stakes than that original game was as soon as Ichiban gets out of prison. So it sets up really nice with the story. I'm really intrigued by where that's going. Ichiban as a character, I really like him a lot. He is an interesting mix of Kiryu and Majima to me, where Kiryu's much quieter, but he's a very respectful dude, is how I see him. He's just like a chill, respectful dude, and Ichiban's got that same like idea of just respect for people, and he always wants to do the right thing, like Kiryu does. But he's also much louder, like Majima. So I kind of feel like he's a nice in between between Kiryu and Majima. So I like his character a lot, and I like his interactions and relationships with the other characters that we've gotten to meet so far. There's a homeless man that you meet when you first get into Yokohama, and he's a super chill dude. And then you've also got this detective who you meet as well, and their relationship. Even
Are they
just in
like
the
party
early going.
members?
Yeah, they're party members.
Okay, cool.
I like their relationship so far a lot, and they also try and put a focus on that because not only are they in your party and they're there for story segments, but they also have certain areas where you can have extra dialogue conversations with these characters, and if you do that, you get extra bonuses for your team. So I like the characters. I like the story a lot.
Has he mentioned Dragon Quest?
Yes,
Yet? Or
multiple
he's a Dragon
times.
Oh
Quest
yeah.
fan?
Multiple times.
Oh yeah.
At least once per cutscene.
Not that much, but he mentions it in the first like 20 minutes, and then at the point that I just played, the other two characters were roasting Ichiban because they're like, "Oh, what did you want to be when you were a kid?" And he's like, "Oh, I wanted to be a hero, like in the video games, like in Dragon Quest." And they all just start roasting him for it. But yeah, I like the characters a lot. I like the setting a lot. You start in Kamurocho in 2000. Here's one thing that so the end of the 20th century, is that
That's the
1999?
1900s. Yes.
1999.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right. So they're saying, okay, this is the end of the 20th century. Because it's New Year's is when the game starts and it takes place.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, so we're in 1999. No, we're at the end of the year 2000. And they're saying that because
That's like people who think the decade starts in 2021.
it was so weird because they were like, all right, let's cap the end of the 20th century in style or whatever. I'm like, all right. And then they show some people who are getting ready to celebrate, and they're wearing the glasses with the like double O's, and then there's a one. I'm like, 2001? What? Wait, 2000? So that got me kind of confused.
That's really weird. I wonder if that's really strange.
Yeah,
Might just be
yeah.
a common
That's
thing in
like a
Japan.
Japanese thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there are some people like that, right? Where it's like, oh, the
Mhm.
start of like the decade isn't until the next
The
year.
first.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. That
I didn't expect we'd be talking about this tonight. That's
it was
that's
just
a random ass.
it was a very weird thing that kind of caught me off guard. But anyways, I like the characters a lot. I like the story a lot, and that's pretty par for the course for the Yakuza games. They're usually
And the combat,
the combat.
barely any.
So prefacing this by the fact that I'm only 5.5 hours in, and the first 3.5 hours of the game are nearly all story. I don't think the combat has gotten enough time to sink in and to expand, because as you start off, you don't really have too many moves that you can use. You basically have like one like special move that you have, and then your basic attack, a guard, and then as I've been going along, I've been unlocking more and more skills. So I haven't been able to form a full opinion on it yet, just because it hasn't completely opened up yet. But it's interesting. It's interesting how they have it set up to try and take the style of the original games with like the items that you can pick up on the battlefield to attack with. The fact that it's not just a regular turn-based RPG, but you have to move to characters' positions, and that if another character is in your way, like if you target a character who's behind somebody else and go after them, then that character in front will hit you and you lose your attack. So you have to keep in mind who's in front of what, and that can kind of change how you're going about a fight. You may want to pick a guy off, but he's behind somebody else, so you're going to have to go after the other guy first. So it's interesting. It's interesting how they have it set up, and then they keep some of the quick time events that the Yakuza games have used in the past for the specials. You have either button prompts like mashing square or hitting triangle at the right time to get the maximum amount of damage from your specials. And with the items on the battlefield, if you run past like a bike on the ground or something that you can pick up, you will automatically pick it up and use it. But every time that I've done that, I never planned it. I didn't even realize it was there. And then he just picks up a bike and starts hitting guys. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a little bit harder to be kind of tactical with the items that you're picking up, because it all depends on where the enemy ends up. Because, they'll ragdoll and then they'll end up over here, and it's like, oh, there's no items over here. I guess I just kind of have to roll without. And it's just a little bit slower, I guess. I felt that a lot in the game's first dungeon, where it is a dungeon. It was corridors with fights and items that you can pick up. And I don't know, with the earlier games, when you're going through those dungeons specifically, it felt a lot more fluid, because you were kind of just getting into these encounters and just blasting through them, and then you were just rolling along. But here it was run up to the guys, you initiate the fight, have to go through all the menus, go through the fight, and then there's another 6 or 7 of the fights left in the dungeon. In the overworld, it's like the older games where you just hop in and then boom, there they are, and then you go. But it kind of felt different to me in the dungeons, where it just felt slower than the old games.
Well, hopefully it does pick up. I mean, like, the first 5 hours of Dragon Quest 11, the combat's not that great when you don't have that many skills unlocked and things like that. And from what I've seen, this game has a pretty in-depth job system that doesn't sound like we've really even scratched.
No, because at the point where I'm at is now like the first jobs that I'm unlocking. I've just had the one job, and I just got the other one, so I really haven't dove into how that changes things. And if you have different jobs equipped, your skills level up differently as you level up. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of areas that I haven't gotten into yet. So it remains to be seen how much I like the combat in the end. But as it is right now, I think I'd prefer the older style. Maybe that's just because I played 7 games of that before.
8,
right? 8 games. Yeah. Wait, 8,
9,
7. There's 7 mainline
6
games.
Yakuza,
Yakuza Judgment.
And
8
Judgment,
games,
right? Judgment,
yeah.
Yes, which is the same combat. But I do appreciate how they tried to take as much of the original combat style into this RPG with the quick time events, with the items that you can use. I assume they'll have some like heat actions and things with your specials. So despite it being a lot different, it is very faithful still to that original style of the brawler that it was before. And then everything else there is still great. The sub stories, the map is. I haven't explored much of Yokohama yet.
Yeah, how is Yokohama? I've been wondering about that.
I haven't explored a lot of it yet. I'm in kind of one quadrant of the town so far, so I haven't explored too much of it. And it seems like more of it unlocks not only the size of the map, but locations as well. Depending on what you do, I think new shops and things will open up. Like I did a sub story and got a pawn shop to unlock, so I think that it kind of expands out as you do different things. Did the trash collecting, which was very interesting. Regular Yakuza weirdness where you're picking up cans with this bike, and you've got like other rival homeless people who are trying to pick up the cans as well. So you're racing along this track, and if you pick up the boost and slam into them, they drop their cans. But if you get hit, you drop yours. Just normal weird Yakuza stuff that was fun. And there's also just a lot more stats in this one because it's an RPG. Not only do you have all of the different stats that come along with your character's abilities, but you also have the ability to level up Ichiban's personality depending on how you answer certain things in dialogue. That's the only thing that I've done so far that has affected it at all. I did a couple of choices that increased my kindness, but from what it seems like, you can unlock certain special things or certain sub-stories by having a certain amount of kindness or whatever else in his personality. So there's a bunch of stuff to level up there, as is with most RPGs. There's always a bunch of stuff to level up. But yeah, it's a good time so far. Waiting on that combat to see if it really sinks in. I'm now getting to the point where I am unlocking more abilities. I have more characters now, so the combat should be more fluid now that I'm hopping between characters and they all have their different abilities. We have the healer. We've got you've got the big beefy dude. Like, I'm into it now where hopefully by next week I'll have a better grasp of how I feel on the combat. But the rest of the game that surrounds it, with the story, with the map and the extra crap to do, with the characters, it's all great. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excited to hear how your thoughts develop on the combat, because JRPGs are so long. Like you're still at the very start of this thing, so it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over the weeks.
Yeah, and I think the mark of a good RPG is how the combat evolves over time, so that it doesn't get stale after so many hours. So hopefully Yakuza Like a Dragon is able to do that as well, and keep it relatively fresh throughout its runtime.
Yeah.
It's a good time. I highly recommend it so far. For the story and characters alone. Zach, you're gonna have to get it at some point.
I know I'm definitely getting it at some point. When is the real question?
Yeah. And honestly, that is really all I've been playing this week. Is that I did get Sakuna though. Sakuna showed up, so that just gets sidelined completely because Yakuza is here. And then who knows what happens depending on how long this takes before Cyberpunk comes out in a couple of weeks. So Sakuna may just be sitting on that shelf for a while, not doing anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, glad to have both of those. Hyrule Warriors is also out as we're speaking right now, I believe.
It is. I have not been able to play it yet since we're recording the night before it comes out, but I'm picking it up on launch day, so next week I'll have some thoughts on it. But I just wanted to mention that reviews are out, and it is reviewing very well for a Musou title. Don't know if you guys have seen any reviews, but pretty high scores. I think it has a 79 on Metacritic right now, which I think is very good for a Musou game.
Got a preference for a Musou game, yeah.
Yes, very good for a Musou game, so I was excited to see that. But what's disappointing is I've read some reviews, and they say actually the combat is the best part of this game, and the Breath of the Wild style and the character variety, and the worst part is the story. That is what I was worried about when I played the demo. And they say, like, obviously I didn't read too much because I still want it. It's basically a Zelda game, so I'm excited to go in and see what it's all about. But basically, like, it doesn't really live up to the billing of this huge epic story about the terrible events that happened before Breath of the Wild. So I don't know exactly what that means. I was worried from the weird time travel aspect in the demo that there's going to be some retconning, as I talked about on a couple weeks ago. So I'm concerned about that. But the fact that that's the reason it's not scoring well everywhere and not the gameplay has me really excited, because I really liked the gameplay in the demo. Super excited to get more characters like the champions. So I think it just looks like a blast to play. So I'm excited to dive into that this weekend.
I will say, if that is true, then that is kind of unfortunate for those people that aren't into the style of game that it is and are mainly
just
playing
doing it for the
story. Because,
yeah,
I mean, let's be real here. A lot of it was built on that story and being like, oh, this grand tale of what happened before Breath of the Wild. And if you play Breath of the Wild, you should play this to see what happened before. So, hopefully,
I do still think there's
some
merit, though. There's still some merit for just getting back into that world, even if the cutscenes themselves and the dialogue and what happens isn't fantastic. There's still, I think, something to be said for just diving back into the Breath of the Wild world, because I mean, the game does look beautiful. It looks like it lives up to just the style of the original Breath of the Wild, and like just even menus and font and weapons and materials and all this stuff is very Breath of the Wild. So for people who just love that world, I think it still seems worth it to jump in. But if you are a heavy lore specifically person, you might be a little disappointed based on what I've seen. I'm curious to see what I think next week. It also looks like a meaty game. Like I've seen some people like 35 to 40 hours that they played for review.
Just for the campaign, because those games are just long as hell normally, right?
I don't know if it was just for the campaign, because I think the one review I said they spent 40 hours in the game as a whole, including doing not all the side stuff, but a lot of it.
But I mean, in the original Hyrule Warriors, couldn't people sink hundreds of hours into that thing?
Mm-hmm. There were adventure modes with like these maps inspired by the original Legend of Zelda that you would walk around this grid and do different missions on each part of the grid. And it was actually pretty cool. Those maps were cool, and it got a lot of DLC. So, but this looks more like a focused experience. Like you're on the map of Hyrule the whole time, and you do these side quests that are on the map, or you do the main missions, or you help out people. So yeah, I'm very excited for it. I'm excited to dive in, and I've been thinking about this story a lot over the last few weeks because I'm just a little worried about it. But yeah, Nintendo's been pumping this game up. It feels to me more like a Zelda release than a spin-off release. So yeah, a lot of anticipation for me to finish the show, go to bed, wake up, and go get the game.
Hopefully it lives up to most of its billing.
Yeah, we're excited to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, for sure. Should we get into the news?
Let's do it. What do we got this week, Logan?
A Far Cry 6 release date was potentially leaked on the Microsoft Store. Remember, it was supposed to come out in February and was delayed due to COVID-19. And its potential new date is May 25th, 2021. And the Microsoft Store has actually leaked a number of games in the past and been accurate. I think the most recent example is Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Prominent source.
Listed it for December 3rd, which is its release date is December 3rd.
That's also a Ubisoft game, too.
Yeah, so probably this will be its new release date.
We still haven't
it's kind of like The Last of Us, where
any gameplay for that, have we? No, it's just that one trailer from months ago.
Yeah, probably going to look fairly similar to all the other Far Cry games.
Probably, yeah.
Can't imagine it's going to be third person,
Yeah. I'd like to
Battle Royale,
I mean, something different, but it's not. Yeah. It's just going to be another Far Cry. But still, May, if that is true, that's not that far away.
When are we playing it?
Half a year.
When it's $20.
So in August?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I think when we hear the word indefinitely, we kind of fear the worst. But The Last of Us Part 2 was delayed indefinitely this year, and it came out a month after it was supposed to come out. So, yeah, I believe it. I mean, it's a place that's been reliable at leaking dates before. It's straight from Microsoft, Xbox. So yeah, that'll be a May release for next year. Yeah, there's not much news this week. I feel
that's like it. That's all the news.
Far Cry 6.
That's it. Cross-platform PlayStation games are supposedly built from the ground up for PS5. So this was a recent breakout from CEO of Sony, Jim Ryan, who basically reassured fans that these games are going to take advantage of the PlayStation 5. We're talking about Horizon Forbidden West. I think is the biggest one on the horizon.
Nice.
I just did that. That was on accident.
I got it.
And Miles Morales just came out and is on both, and Sackboy also. And playing Miles Morales and Sackboy personally, I think they do feel next gen to me. Like Sackboy runs at 60 frames per second. I was telling Zach when we were playing Monster Hunter earlier, I don't like what's happening to me with frame rate. I am becoming too obsessed with frame rate because most of the games I've played on PS5 run at 60 and they just look amazing. Like when you're talking 4K 60, it's noticeable compared to 30. I spent most of Spider-Man playing in 30, the fidelity mode with the ray tracing and all that fancy visual stuff. And then I was swinging around the city just to try it out. I switched to the performance mode and I couldn't go back. I'm like, man, it still looks fantastic. Like the visual sacrifices aren't really noticeable to my eye, but the 60 frames per second is super noticeable. And you don't have that option on PS4, and I'm assuming it's going to be similar for things like Horizon. So I don't know if I believe that they're totally built from the ground up and taking full advantage when they do have to consider the PS4, but it was definitely noticeable. I was not playing on my PlayStation 4 anymore.
Yeah, Horizon Forbidden West is the one that would get me. Because with Spider-Man, that was, that was from the PS4 game, and then, bring it to PS5. It's a little bit easier for that to be cross-platform. And then I think Sackboy is a smaller title. Horizon Forbidden West, I would assume, is going to be a pretty big game. I'm wondering what type of compromises they would have to make if they are building this from the ground up for PS5. What are the compromises and what are the things they're going to have to pull back from for the PS4 version? Because there's got to be something beyond just a 60 frames per second mode, like the two different types of modes. There's got to be more than just that.
Yeah. So the exact quote is, the first thing to say is that our PS5 experiences or versions of these games are built from the ground up to take advantage of the PS5 feature set. So I think offering a PS5 version of these games for the PS5 community and then a PS4 version of these games to the PS4 community, I don't see what's wrong with that. So who knows what it really means? I mean, this is the CEO. He's not going to say, "Oh, it's just a port. It's just a port of the PS4."
Well, no. But you also see the quote in there where it's like, "Oh, we don't want to abandon the player base," and then that's just that's not always the best reason for for keeping the old title, the old gen around.
I would be completely fine if Horizon Forbidden West was just a PS5 game. Like, I'm not going to play it on PS4. I wouldn't do that to my PS4. It would probably break it. And just remembering the load times of quick travel in the first game, I can't even imagine what the load times would be in that game for the PS4.
Yeah, so it's just interesting. I mean, I totally get them not abandoning the PS4.
100 million people.
100 million people. It's
not a lot of people.
Minus the people that hop to PS5 and, minus the people
and the people who get it to watch Netflix and play FIFA
and FIFA
and not
Madden
do much else.
Yeah.
That just leaves like a few thousand people.
So, about 30 people.
Yeah,
but there's still a huge audience there, so it makes sense. But when we're talking 3 years, for me, as an early adopter of a PS5, that's a little long for me. Saying that they're going to really support the PS4 ecosystem for the next 3 years, like,
with
I don't know,
games,
I'm not a big fan of that. Yeah,
you can be like support it with firmware and just make sure it's like actually supported with updates and things and store features and things, but to have it be supported game wise for games that are also coming to PS5, that is definitely a little bit much.
And it's going to be interesting to see what titles are cross-gen in the next 3 years and what aren't. Ratchet
They're gonna
and Clank
have to pick.
is not. Yeah, it's not. It's the one where they're ripping through all those different dimensions, and it's basically instantaneous load times is what Ratchet and Clank shows off, and the PS4 just can't do that. So, like, is there going to be something in God of War 2 that the PS4 can't do, or are they going to put it on both platforms? Like, I just don't know. So, the next Naughty Dog game, like, they make the most beautiful games in the world. I personally don't want that on PS4.
As we go along, I'm just more and more curious how these things are going to run on base PS4. Because like even my PS4 Slim, speaking of load times, Yakuza Like a Dragon, I've been seeing people being like, "Oh yeah, these load times are so fast." All these people on Series X, and I'm like, "Man, these load times on PS4 are not that great." Like, I'm sitting here for a little while, and And there have been moments where the game has to like stop to like load into battles and things. So, and that's on a PS4 Slim, which is improved over the PS4 base PS4. So it's like, man, if we're gonna be sitting here 2 years from now with a PS5 game that has a PS4 release, dear God, that thing is gonna make the PS4 base model catch fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wonder what it's going to do to development time of these things. I mean,
It's gonna prolong it because they have to test all these different, these different ports.
Got to make sure
whether or not it's
runs.
PS4, PS5, PC.
Exactly. That's what we saw with Cyberpunk. That was the main reason for the final, maybe Cyberpunk delay.
Yeah. God
was
damn it,
that
Stadia.
they're releasing it on so many different platforms.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that will work. PS exclusives, I think it's a little different because you're just worried about your PS4 ecosystem and the PS5. It's not all this crazy stuff that Cyberpunk is coming out on. But still, I think it could extend load time or development times and load times on PS4. And right now, Horizon is slated for second half 2021. I wouldn't be surprised if that got pushed because the PS4 version just isn't ready. Or would they release the PS5 version first and say, hey, we're not ready to push out the PS4 one, but here it is for the next gen console?
And it's like, man, how much is that thing going to sell? That's the other thing. I do also think that it may come down to these first couple of titles and they see how well they sell on PS4 because they say, oh, we have this 100 million people who are still into the PS4 ecosystem. But if they get a couple of titles in and realize that these games just aren't selling on PS4 because either people are buying them on PS5 or just waiting, then they may just be like, well, there's no point. And then they may cut that 3 years considerably.
You have to think about the audience that is on each system at this point, because the people that adopt PS5 on day one are the most hardcore.
Right. They're the people picking up these big time exclusives like when they come out.
Yeah. Because a lot of the people that aren't going to pick up I will be absolutely shocked if in 3 years all three of us don't have a PS5. Like we just will in 3 years. All three of us will have a PlayStation 5. The people that won't, that will still linger behind, are those people we mentioned earlier that mostly use it as a media box or a sports game box or bought it for one game and then put it away. And Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West are games that don't really appeal to the casual gamer. It's more the people in the know, the hardcore fans who like these big open world RPGs. And those people are more likely to pick up a PS5, are the people who are going to pick up these PlayStation games. So I wouldn't be surprised if these games don't sell that well on PlayStation 4, honestly.
And by the time we get to Forbidden West launch date, you would have to hope that the supply chains have gotten a little bit better where the people who are still trying to get a PS5 who haven't gotten one yet are able to, and then that's just less people on PS4 because they've migrated over to PS5. And that's just going to shift more and more. But,
yeah, like Zach, you said you're not going to play Horizon on your PS4. You're going to play it when you get a PS5.
Yeah.
I wouldn't either.
I'm definitely waiting for that much smoother experience.
Yeah, for sure. So all three of us would play it on PS5.
With Spider-Man specifically, because that is built on a game from PS4 that just looks better and runs better on PS5, I think it's not the worst thing in the world to go play that on PS4. You just have to know that you're in it for longer loading times. But as we get further and further away from that, where there are games that are built for PS5, it's just going to be more and more noticeable. And then you have to just think, like, why would I have my first experience with the game be inferior like that when I can get a much better experience on this other platform, even if I may have to wait until I'm ready to pick up the next console.
Especially for a game as beautiful as Horizon will be. The first one is a gorgeous game. The second one will be too. And you just got to play that on PS5. But maybe there's some people who are planning to never get a PS5. And they're like, okay, so this will be one of the last games I get to play on my PS4. And that's good for them too. It definitely serves some people, but I hope it doesn't go on for 3 years. If Uncharted solely #1 is also on PS4, I'll be like, it's not good enough. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 will absolutely be on both. That's going to be a cross-gen title. I bet money right now.
Yeah.
Well, for sure.
It depends on how long Square Enix takes on it. If they delay it for another 4 years.
It might be the last PS4 game that ever comes out.
Dear God, we're in 2025, and they're like, PS4, baby, it's coming out.
Yeah. Depending on when it comes out, which I think it will come out in, 2022? So I think it'll still be on PS4. Yeah.
I'll say late 2021.
Oh wow, that is bold. I wish.
December.
That'd be
Pumping
awesome.
these bad boys out. They got the first one out, broke the seal.
I
No,
mean,
let's
they got the engine.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that, though. Talk about Microsoft. They say that Bethesda titles should be first, better, or best on Xbox platforms, basically saying they're not necessarily going to be exclusive, which is, I think, kind of what I was leaning towards expecting. Like year-long exclusives. We saw that with Rise of the Tomb Raider. Was on Xbox for a year, came to PlayStation later. So yeah, I do think that's what we're going to see with most of these big games. Anything you guys have to add on this one?
Nope.
With first, that makes sense because you know, we're talking about we've had situations in the past where even third parties will be like, hey, you know, get this exclusive thing with this game for the first 6 months, and then it comes to things everywhere else. So that's normal. But like better or best, I'm wondering exactly what that means in terms of experience for the player. Are we talking about like performance, or are they just saying like, oh, because Series X is the most powerful thing, it's naturally better or best?
Well, that's kind of all I read
platforms.
into it, was they're just saying that Series X is the most powerful console right now. So it's like, oh, if you want to play it first and have it run the best, get it here, or you can get it on.
You know, maybe they pull one of those things where they have exclusive like features or something. That's not completely unheard of to have something like that.
Or maybe your save won't corrupt on Xbox, but it will on PlayStation, like Skyrim always did for people.
Wasn't that just PS3 with a lot?
Yeah,
it was Bethesda games too with with the PS3. It was all those Bethesda games that were struggling. So maybe it'll be the same thing. I don't know. And with that first, I do wonder how long of a window they would give it. Like, say if they want to have a timed exclusive on Series X and S for Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, would you give it 6 months? Would you give it a year?
Yeah.
How long would you be going with that? I would wonder. I would think it'd either be 6 months or a year. Would be my guess.
No more.
At least 6 months.
Absolutely no more than a year. In my opinion, I think that would be ridiculous. If it was like in 2 years you can get it here on your other console. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But I feel fortunate that I'm a PlayStation player who doesn't care that much about Bethesda games, because for a lot of people this was like a huge acquisition for Microsoft that maybe swayed them Xbox's way. But for me, I'm like, I don't really play Bethesda, so I kind of feel fortunate that all the kind of questions up in the air about where these games are going to be doesn't really, because I don't play them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they do have a lot of studios under their umbrella.
Arcane, that's what
Arcane, is under there. You've got id Software for Doom. Like, there's a lot of games that you don't associate necessarily with Bethesda, but they are technically Bethesda games. But yeah, the big ones, of course, with Fallout 76 turned me off of Fallout. Man, still thinking back to when you dodged a bullet on that.
I know.
Almost bought it for $60.
Wow.
My dad bought it for $60. All right, our last story before the big one is there was a huge Capcom leak. Lots of sensitive data was leaked to the public, which is just awful. I want to start with that. Like,
we love Capcom.
Sensitive information is at risk now, which just
good.
Sucks. And I don't like leaks in general, because basically for the next 4 years, Capcom's announcements are already known, unless these are fake plans or these plans change. But at a baseline, we have kind of an idea of what they're planning to do in the next few years. I mean, this list has new Resident Evils, new Mega Mans, new Street Fighters. So there's a lot going on in there. New Resident Evils. But the only one I want to bring up, Ace Attorney is back. It is back, and I am relieved. I thought this franchise might have been dead. I'm not going to lie. They just kept throwing the original trilogy on every platform. Like, is this it? Is this where we're at with Ace Attorney now? And now we are seeing Ace Attorney, the great Ace Attorney, Daigyakuten Saiban 1 and 2, which are currently only in Japan, getting localized for a Switch pack.
Is that localized? Is that confirmed?
Yeah, that's the rumor that I saw today.
Okay. Because from what I saw before, it was like the box set, and it was still just Japan. But hopefully.
So the rumor I read was that it will be localized and have a physical release in North America.
Wow, get a physical release? Would it be for both, or would it be just for the?
Yeah, a combo pack.
Okay.
A combo pack of just the 2 great Ace Attorney games, not the trilogy.
Okay.
Is what I saw today. And then, even honestly more exciting for me, Ace Attorney 7 is also rumored to be in development to also come out next year. Worth noting, this stuff is all from 2019, so who knows what COVID did to any of it? Who knows what's actually real or what? But dude, there's life. There are signs of life for Ace Attorney, and I am thrilled about it because I was seriously worried that it was dead. I mean, I hacked a 3DS to play the Japanese version, and I just have this weird magic touch.
Yeah,
so whatever
my God.
I go through these great lengths to start playing these games that I think are inaccessible, and then bam, here they come. So Great Ace Attorney could be coming to the West next year. Whew, that would be amazing.
That'd be big. When did those come out?
2015 and 2018, I think. Something like that.
Dang.
Yeah, so I had given up all hope on
that. Yeah, and fair, honestly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
That is a long time.
Yeah, and there's also rumors of 4, 5, and 6 getting a trilogy on
Which
Switch.
Would make sense.
Oh my God. So you can
how well did the trilogy sell? That's the reason why it sells pretty well, so that's probably potentially the reason why they're doing all these localizations.
And the problem with Ace Attorney is that it's stuck in the West with the Phoenix Wright brand. Because Apollo Justice sold like garbage, the Miles spinoff sold like garbage, and Capcom kind of decided that the only way it would sell would be to put Phoenix Wright's name back on it, and then they did that with 5 and 6. I'm really curious what they're going to do with 7, because I really think it's time for Phoenix to not be the main character anymore. He has had 6 games of really his story being told. So I'm ready to explore some new stories within that universe.
I mean, did they end his story with the last one? Or
oh no, it's open. It's definitely open for
okay.
him to come back. It's not ended by any means. He could be the star of infinite more games with the way they left it open. So I'm excited to see where 7 goes. It's also weird. The writer of 5 and 6 left Capcom a few months ago. So I don't know who's writing this game. I hope it's Shu Takumi, who wrote the original 4 and wrote Late Ace Attorney and wrote the Great Ace Attorney games. So he left Capcom after the 4th game, and he's kind of come back as like a contractor to work on these other ones. So it'd be awesome if he was helming a main entry again. But there's just a lot of questions, and I hope it's real. I really hope it's real.
Yeah, that would suck to get your hopes dashed like that from this. Getting so much hope.
It seems like your hopes are pretty high right now.
They are. Signs of life for my favorite franchise of all time. It's got to come back. But in the meantime, I'm putting Great Ace Attorney on the back burner because I want to play the official translation. I want to play the real translation with the characters' intended names and the right references and stuff in place. So I'm waiting to finish that game. It's supposed to come out sometime next year, so I guess a year from now, if we've heard nothing, I'll go back to it and finish the translation.
Give it some time. Hopefully, they can pull a Yakuza 0 and pull the series up and get it hype again.
Yep.
Yeah, they sell decently well. It's just been dormant for a few years. Like they've just been doing nothing, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was like the transition to Switch because they never made an Ace Attorney game on Switch before. It was always just on handhelds. So I don't know why it's been quiet for so long, but it feels good to have some hope again. Seriously, I've been thinking the reason I got Great Ace Attorney all booted up and ready to play in English was because I was convinced the series was dead and that they weren't doing anything. Because like a year ago, they're like, we've got a big surprise for Ace Attorney fans next year. And then they just released the trilogy everywhere. I'm like, I don't need this anymore. I played these games like 4 times each. I'm done. So, yeah. Anyway, some other cool stuff like Monster Hunter 6, which will be the most likely the true sequel to World, was in there also.
Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter 5?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is
they rebranded it.
The numbering on that? So in terms of like...
Oh, I can explain.
Dear God.
Zach and I talked about this
Give
morning.
me the Spark Notes version of this.
Okay. Spark Notes, there are 2 teams that develop Monster Hunter. You can think of it kind of like Pokemon. So each main entry kicks off the new generation. So Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter 2, Monster Hunter 3, Monster Hunter 4, Monster Hunter World are the 5 gens.
Were they called 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yeah, it's 1, 2, try, and 4.
Oh, try.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What
but then try, but then each game gets an expanded version.
Right.
So think Emerald to the Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah.
So Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Iceborne is the example of that. They moved to DLC instead of the new full retail release. And then there's a secondary Monster Hunter team that works on spin-off titles. Like Monster Hunter Generations is a part of Gen 4 because it was Monster Hunter 4, then Generations came after. it's not a main entry. It's a spin-off, not in the main series. And that is Monster Hunter Rise. It is developed by the secondary team. So it's the spin-off title to plug in between the generations.
And then those typically get an expansion, but now we're thinking Rise will get a big DLC expansion.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's exciting.
All right. So it's just
Monster
Pokemon,
Hunter,
but
It
like
is.
not as crap.
way better.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, now Pokemon's crap.
It's Pokemon, but you kill the monsters instead of catch them. Well,
Yes.
but sometimes you can catch them, but you don't.
And
use
sometimes
So
them.
they're
you
the
kill
same.
them in Pokemon.
But-
They're the
They're
same.
pretty much the same thing.
They're the same, except one series is still great and the other one fell off.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yes.
But I do want to say I am disappointed that all this sensitive information was leaked. Even though I was hyped by the Ace Attorney stuff,
So it's like,
overall I'm like,
here's kind of the thought though. It's like, yeah, you see this news and it's like, oh, this is awesome, like super hype. But how much more hype would it be if the first you heard about it was like an actual gameplay trailer where they're like, where maybe they acknowledge it and they're like, yo, we've been gone for a while, but we're back. And it's like a drop like that. And you just tear that away for all of these, if these are true. Whether we're talking about Resident Evil, whether we're talking about Monster Hunter, whether we're talking about Ace Attorney, for a lot of people, there's no chance to get that initial surprise because it's all out there. And then, of course, if people's information gets stolen and hacked, that's
just
awful.
horrible. Yeah, that's just terrible. But we'll see. This also gives me renewed hope for Phoenix Wright and Smash. Because there's going to be characters till the end of next year, and if Ace Attorney 7 is announced sometime before then, it could coincide, and it would just be.
Speaking of fighting games, did you see the reason why Kiryu is not in fighting games? Because he doesn't hit women.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
That was what Nagoshi said, was that he doesn't hit women, and that's why he doesn't want him in these fighting games. Because
Kiryu has been the most requested Tekken DLC fighter since the game came out.
He can't be in it.
And that's the reason?
Apparently.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
One other thing that I saw just today, speaking of Yakuza, just going back to that for a second, apparently they switched to the RPG midway through the development because of the reception to the April Fools. Apparently they switched it.
Oh my god, what?
If it sounds like it's true, that would be absolutely bonkers. If they're just like, so that April Fools did pretty well, let's just change the whole game.
That's pretty cool,
This is incredible.
Yeah, they're great.
That's neat.
Yeah,
I know you're not
tidbits there.
I know you're not hot on the combat yet. I have a gut feeling that'll grow on you as it becomes more in depth, because that's just how JRPGs kind of go. So I really think it would be cool, like what we've been saying, if the Judgment became a series that carried on the beat 'em up, and Yakuza was able to really experiment with this turn-based RPG stuff. I think that'd be really neat.
Yeah, be able to keep the original series' combat alive in some form, but also allow the main series to kind of do its own thing and try and expand beyond just the brawler. Yeah, so there's.
I also want the Judgment, because Judgment's great.
Judgment's so good. I love that game.
Yep.
That game's great. Yeah.
All right, so let's get on to our biggest story here, which is the Game Awards nominees were announced for the Game Awards 2020. Going to be a virtual show, still going to have announcements, awards, and orchestral performances as they've had the last few years.
Who we got Green Day. Are we going to get
We have the Game Awards Orchestra is coming back.
Yeah, didn't they play from God of War last time?
So,
I don't remember.
Or 2 times ago?
What would be the game that they pick? Would it just be Last of Us?
Final
Fantasy?
Days Gone.
Ooh,
Final Fantasy 7, right?
That would be good.
That would be the call, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Last was
Days Gone.
Yeah.
Days Gone. It comes out. Here's an orchestra about Days Gone.
To honor its re-release on the PlayStation 5.
Here to honor Joseph St. Cloud and Sackboy. We're gonna have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we made some predictions for each category except the esports category, because we are completely removed from that realm.
Yeah, I have
I just voted everything that was Overwatch League related, because that's the only esports I've ever had any interest in, even a little bit.
This is
nope.
Okay.
It's your most played game on PlayStation 4. So this is our O2 segment for the night. We're going to get to what we've been playing in a little bit, but we're going to spend a solid amount of time talking about this. I went through and wrote what I hope will win each award and what I think will win each award. So if we can kind of go through that, starting with the big one, we'll start with Game of the Year. Animal Crossing New Horizons, Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2. Zach, what do you think? What do you want?
I think The Last of Us Part 2, and I voted for The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's a pretty clear-cut winner. For the most part, I played all of these games except for Doom Eternal and Hades. Actually, are we talking about these, or are we just breezing through them for time?
If you got a little tidbit,
we got a little tidbit. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm just, this is just because it's fresh, but Ghost of Tsushima, man, I feel like it's an underdog. I wouldn't be disappointed if it won. I'm just gonna say that, but I think Last of Us, and I voted Last of Us.
Kevin?
I'm in the same boat, but my reason is because I only played 2 of the. Well, I guess I played Animal Crossing, but I don't know. I didn't put that in there.
Yeah.
Last of Us Part 2 and Final Fantasy VII Remake were the 2 that I was going up against for me, and I went with Last of Us Part 2. And I think Last of Us Part 2 is one of those games that I think is just going to win a lot of awards. You know,
it checks all the boxes. It's like an Oscar film, right?
Right.
Pretty much every category.
For better or for worse, you know.
I think for better. I mean, I love The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah. I won't be disappointed if it sweeps all the categories.
I mean, we talked about that game for 2 hours on our spoiler cast. So you can't do that with that many games.
But I do feel, as we get to some games later on, I feel like there are some games that are just smaller titles, and the fact that they're in the same category as a game like Last of Us, they make it overshadowed.
Yeah.
So in most respects, I think it's fine, but I do think that because of how big of a game it is, it may take some thunder away from some of these smaller titles.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just talking about Game of the Year right now. I agree with you in future categories, but for Game of the Year, I think it absolutely deserves to win. The one I think has the best chance to beat it is actually Hades. I think Hades has had an enormous surge of momentum, especially in the last few months. The Last of Us Part 2 is a little bit divisive. And it is the media outlets that really do decide who wins this. But so I think The Last of Us 2 will still win. We don't get to see the runners up, but I bet Hades is actually going to be close behind and maybe has a chance of stealing Game of the Year. Because people
Dark
are
Horse
obsessed
pick.
with that game.
People love that game.
Yeah. I just don't like roguelikes, so I haven't played it. But if it really sweeps a bunch of awards at the Game Awards, I'll probably have to download it and try it out to see what it's all about.
And then if it wins all the awards, it'll probably have an award sale, and then you can pick it up for cheaper.
That's true. I'm surprised that Ori is not on this list. I thought people really loved that game, and it's not here. And I also thought Half-Life Alyx would be here.
Yeah, Half-Life Alyx is in some other categories, yeah.
It is. But those are the 2 I'm surprised aren't there. Best game direction, we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, and The Last of Us Part 2. So a pretty similar list. Animal Crossing and Doom are off, and Half-Life was added. For this one, I think Hades is going to win this one, and I want Half-Life Alyx to win because I felt like it was robbed from being on the Game of the Year list because no one got to play because it was in VR.
Yeah.
And based on what I've heard from like listening to some podcasts from some major outlets, they played this thing when they were already in quarantine and not working in the office anymore. So if they were in the office, they would have been able to pass around the headset. Everyone would have gotten to try this thing. But instead, it was really just the reviewers that got to play this thing. And I think that's going to hurt it a lot. And it wasn't actually talked about that much.
It's probably why it didn't have legs like some other games, because there's just not that many people that are going to be picking up. The people who have VR are going to be picking that thing up day one because it's like the one big VR title to get. You know, probably wouldn't get as many sales going down the line of people buying VR. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Kev, what'd you pick for this one?
I picked Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think just commendable what they decided to do with splitting it up and the way that they were able to pull that off despite it being divisive for people who play the original. I think it was an interesting move to break it up into multiple titles, and I think they did the original justice, even though I never played it. I think Last of Us Part 2 will win. Again, it's one of those. It's a game that I think is tailor made to sweep a lot of awards, and so I think that here, it's just going to win again. But you know, I'd be welcome to some of these other titles getting some awards as well.
Zach?
Yeah, so what I want to win, very similar to Kevin, I chose Final Fantasy VII. I think breaking it up and expanding it out was a very interesting direction to go to, and I think it's a super great idea. But, you know, Last of Us, I think, is going to win because it's going to sweep every category it's in.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not so confident about that. I'm not as confident about it as you guys are.
I mean, if it's media outlets that are voting on it,
yeah,
if it's based on
Yeah,
on
players.
the players, because the way The Last of Us Part 2 is, with some of its story
50-50.
beats and all that stuff, yeah,
Yeah.
it would not win. But if we're going off of media, it is one of those media darling type games that has a better chance to win these categories. But who knows?
Best narrative, Kevin?
My vote's going to be Last of Us Part 2 because it was the one that I played. But 13 Sentinels.
Remake's also in there. Final Fantasy Remake's in there.
I do think Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, I guess I should read the nominees. 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake is split up, I didn't get to see the full narrative. So if we're talking purely based on narrative, of the ones that I played, Last of Us Part 2. But from everything I've heard about 13 Sentinels, that game is an absolute masterpiece, and I do want to play it at some point. And that's one of those types of games that I think just gets completely overshadowed by everything else on here. But from what I've heard, 13 Sentinels is fantastic. Because I haven't played it, I vote for Last of Us, and I think Last of Us will win this.
Zach?
Yep, I voted for Last of Us in this one. I think the narrative direction is really where this game shines. It's a story-driven game, so I think it deserves the win, and I'm pretty sure it is going to win.
Oh yeah, I mean,
of all the extra categories, I think it would be this one that it would win because it is so narrative focused.
And I think it's deserving too. The story is fantastic. Like, it's phenomenal, and no spoilers obviously, but it's a really risky story, like we talked about on our spoiler cast. So yeah, I voted for Last of Us. I do think it will win this one. I'm not confident about a lot of the other ones, but I do think that it will win this one. Best art direction. The nominees: Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and The Last of Us Part 2. We're seeing a lot of the same games nominated for all this stuff.
Absolutely.
And just the trio of, I haven't played Hades or Ori, but the PlayStation 4 trio of FF7, Ghost, and Last of Us Part 2. Like, what a year. My gosh, I love all three of those games so much.
Yeah.
And
two of them.
Yeah,
and
it's
sure
exciting to see. Yeah. So, Zach, where'd you go with this one?
For what was the category called? The art direction. I went with Ghost of Tsushima on this one. Actually, I think it's the most beautiful game out of all of them. The setting, the breathtaking variations of fall, winter, all that stuff. The fact that you can play in classic Japanese movie mode. I mean, this game is beautiful. And if in any category I think it could win, it's this one. So I voted for it, and I think it actually has a good chance.
Kev?
I voted for a game I didn't play, Ori. Everything I've seen about those games, they're just absolutely gorgeous. Like, just stunning watching those games in motion. So I wanted to give a vote to them. But I'm going to go with Hades as my prediction. Just everything that I've seen about, like, character designs and just the art of that game. I've seen so many people all about it, all about Hades' art direction and style. So for the one pick for Hades, it was going to be art direction for me.
I think Ori is going to win. That's my prediction for what will win. But my vote goes to Final Fantasy. I really had a tough time debating between all three of these. I love The Last of Us Part 2's like film grain overlay over the camera. I think it's really unique and really cool. And then Ghost of Tsushima is gorgeous, and the nature is just beautiful. But Final Fantasy VII Remake is a gorgeous game, as we've talked about. It looks fantastic. But the moments I love are like when the deep background and the draw distance, the textures look like they did in the PS1 game. And it's just such a cool effect. I played these games back to back, and it's like you're scaling the plate and you see the slums underneath you, and it's literally like the JPEG images, but up-resed, and they look great because it's on the PS4, not the PS1. But it looks like they did in the PS1 game. And some people are like, oh, look at these ugly textures. But to me, it's totally intentional. It's totally to evoke that nostalgia of the original. What you see in front of you is gorgeous and looks like it came out in 2020. But some of the background stuff is paying homage to that original game on the PlayStation 1. I just think it is so cool. So I went with that one. And it's just a beautiful game in general. So that was my pick. But I think Ori will win. I think when you have three third-person, realistic-looking action games...
they kind of meld together a little.
Yeah, I don't think any of those are going to win. But I love how Final Fantasy VII Remake looks. Best score and music: Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and The Last of Us Part 2. Kevin?
Final Fantasy VII Remake for both, for my prediction and for my vote. Music, and that's great. And I think that for a lot of people, there is so much nostalgia for those old tracks that they bring back for this one that I think it has a very good chance. Like we were talking earlier with the orchestra, Final Fantasy VII Remake would be the pick, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I would think for score and music, Final Fantasy VII has got a good shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I voted for Final Fantasy VII. I think it's the clear choice. I definitely think it's going to take away with this category. Best soundtrack out of all these options, in my opinion.
I also love that soundtrack. I picked Final Fantasy for what I want to win, but for my prediction, I said Doom.
Doom's also got a very good score.
Doom's soundtrack, and again, it's like the most unique out of all of these, I think. Just a very different type, heavy metal.
Jazz.
So it's very different than the other ones. So I think it'll win. Best audio design nominees: Doom Eternal, Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, Resident Evil 3, and The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
I hope The Last of Us wins this one. The audio design, I think, is impeccable in that game. I think it sounds great, and I saw this huge Twitter thread about how they created the noises of like the runners and the clickers and the shamblers and the bloaters, and it's just incredible. Like the detail that goes into the audio design of this game, just from an enemy standpoint, and then everything else just sounds great too. So I think that's a place where this game really shines. So I picked it.
As for me, it was the one game I played on this list. So Last of Us Part 2. But yeah, I also for my prediction as well, I think Last of Us Part 2 would win it.
Yeah, I'm Last of Us Part 2 on both of these as well. I think the ambient noises were, at some points overlooked. I think they were handled really well, and the thing that came to mind was just the whistling that the enemies did when you were just hiding in the grass and they were contacting each other without using words. Like if they knew
it's a
where you were,
language. That's another thing that was in that thread. Like their whistles actually have canonical meaning that the creators determined. And like they looked at like a bunch of like native tongues and different things like that to like it's just insane. It's just crazy. So yeah. I think the one thing we talked about I'm not crazy on is when they shout out the names of the people you just killed. I don't love that.
Jim, no!
Oh my God.
I don't care about Jim.
Terry died.
Jim was being annoying, all right?
But everything else about the audio design I thought was phenomenal in The Last of Us. Yeah. Best performance, we have Ashley Johnson as Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, Laura Bailey as Abby in The Last of Us
Part 2.
Yep.
Daisuke Tsuji as Jin in Ghost of Tsushima, Logan Cunningham as Hades in Hades, and then Naji Jiderm, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, I'm sorry, as Miles Morales in Spider-Man Miles Morales. I was surprised Miles Morales wasn't up for more awards, like, because I said it was nothing, and then it's like, oh, best performance for Miles. Like, oh, I guess it just didn't have enough time.
A budget game, $40. Like, it can't be on the Game of the Year things.
Nope.
An indie game, a $20 indie game is.
Yeah.
And none of that matter.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just guess it didn't have enough time to really settle in, since I'm sure they had to submit these things days after it came out.
Yeah, because this thing just came out. It'd be squeaking in to get into the awards.
I was just surprised to see it. I don't know what the cutoff date was either. Zach, what's your pick?
Well, this was the hardest category for me by far. It took me the longest time to decide. I had it between Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey, and Daisuke because I think Daisuke absolutely killed it. I think he was incredible at every point in this game. And this game was chock full of dialogue, especially with all the side stuff. And then I narrowed it down to Ashley Johnson and Daisuke. Even though I love Laura Bailey, I think that those two were shining, and then I gave it to Ashley Johnson because I think she did an incredible job as Ellie. She always does an incredible job as Ellie, and I just personally love her, so I gave it to her. I think she's going to win because it's Ellie, and I think she deserves it.
Kevin?
Because I haven't played these other ones, Last of Us Part 2 was it, so it was between those two, and I went with Laura Bailey. She was able to make a character that I hated at the beginning likable near the end, partly because of the performance. So that was kind of the reason why I went with that. But yeah, for me it was just the Last of Us ones because that's all I played. Laura Bailey.
I think that Ashley Johnson is going to win for Ellie just because Ellie is the face of that game. But I think that Laura Bailey should win it because of what Kevin just said. Like, my God. Just that character, what a journey in that game. And yeah, you can't talk about it too much without talking about it.
All you can say is that wasn't likable and then became more likable as the game went on.
Yeah, and it was incredible. So yeah, that's my pick. But also, I love Jin, and I think he's phenomenal too.
Oh, good.
So that was tough. I think that Jin just suffers from it's just not as controlled of an experience, right, in an open world game, which is why Last of Us Part Two it's almost a perfect game
It's
from
easier to pick out
dialogue and audio
moments.
standpoint. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And open world games are just messier in general and harder to kind of remember that exact performance from start to end. But yeah, and then Miles is also great. Like he's a really fantastic character. But again, in a 7-hour campaign, it was just harder to get it as attached. But yeah, he was great.
And
So
Hades
shout out
guy,
to
who
them.
none of us,
Hades.
who
Yeah, we
none of us
just
know.
played Hades.
Hades, yep.
Games for Impact, the nominees, if found, Kentucky Route Zero, Spirit Fairy, Tell Me Why, and Through the Darkest of Times. Spirit Fairy intrigues me the most. So
Spirit Fair, yep. I had Spirit Fair for both of these. One, my vote,
Mhm.
because out of all of these, it's the one I want to play by far the most. And two,
Mhm.
for my prediction, I also think that Spirit Fair got the most amount of recognition.
It was talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's my prediction as well.
Zach, you played Tell Me Why.
I did play Tell Me Why, and that's the one I voted for. Not only because I played it, not only because it's the only one I played, but I think it did a lot for transgender community and Tlingit culture. I think I'm saying that right. It's Native Alaskan and Pacific Northwest Native culture. I think it did a lot of good stuff in that direction. I enjoyed playing the game and learning about all that stuff. So that was super cool. I want Spirit Fair to win because, like you guys said, that's the one I'm really excited about. I haven't picked it up yet, but it just looks so good.
Yeah, cool. Best, I think we can kind of rick through these ones a little faster. Best ongoing game, Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, and No Man's Sky. I picked Destiny for both because it just had a big expansion drop, so I think it was kind of in the zeitgeist at the time these outlets were voting because it had that huge expansion, and I played some of it this year, so I wanted to win. Kev?
Destiny 2 for the exact same reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
I put No Man's Sky in there just because I think it's commendable what that game's been able to do to go from being one of the most disappointing games of all time to being an ongoing title that, as of now, from what it sounds like, is a quality title that's worth your time. I predict Apex.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, nice.
I predict Fortnite.
Best indie game. Look at the other nominees on this list, and you know what will win. The choices are Carry On, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, Hades, Spelunky 2, and Spiritfarer. Hades is a shoe-in. I would bet hundreds of dollars that Hades will win.
My vote is Spiritfarer. My prediction.
I played 80 hours of Fall Guys this year. Like I loved it, but I don't know if I want it to win based on just how much people seem to love Hades.
Yeah,
Zach.
Yeah, I voted Fall Guys just because I put so much time into it and that I like it the most out of all of these, but I do think Hades will win.
Yeah, out of all of these, it's the easiest one with just the hype behind it and everything.
We have a best debut game. Carry On, Mortal Shell, Raji and Ancient Epic, Roki and Phasmophobia. I said Carry On because I feel like I heard the most about it, and I have not played any of these games.
Yeah, I haven't played any of them, but I saw some Phasmophobia on YouTube. It's got a super cool thing where the voice chat is position based, and they use walkie-talkies, so it's like ghost hunting. So it's really cool ambience wise, and you can even speak to the ghosts, and they recognize some voice commands. So I think it's got actually some really cool features in there. So I think it's probably worthy. Not that I know a lot about these other games, but it's got some cool features.
Phasmophobia is the one I I've heard of, so yeah, I went with that. Didn't have much on that.
This next one, best mobile game. The nominees are Call of Duty Mobile, Genshin Impact, Legends of Runeterra, and Pokemon Cafe Mix, and Among Us, which came out 2 years ago and should not be on this list.
Did the mobile version come out 2 years ago, or did the mobile version come out this year?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Is that how I was able to sneak in one of the versions?
I think that might be how it snuck in, if we're being honest.
I'll look into that. I think Among Us will win. I don't really care for any of these games, so I didn't pick one that I want to win. But
I think Genshin Impact might win.
Yeah,
I think Genshin Impact will win.
Even if it's maybe not known exactly for mobile, I think just Genshin Impact.
It's so popular.
Yeah, it's a big game.
Community support: Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Fall Guys, Fortnite, No Man's Sky, Valorant. I picked Fall Guys for this one because it does have great community support. They add costumes and modes all the time, even though it's new, and just the social media presence is really funny. So
I
I'd
went
like
with
it
Fall
to get
Guys.
some recognition.
I went with Fall Guys just because of the Twitter. That Twitter is handled very well. The guy is fairly popular.
Yeah,
he got his own skin in the game, so it's. I think it's deserving.
Yep, Fall Guys.
Best VR AR game: Dreams, Half-Life Alyx, Marvel's Iron Man VR, Star Wars Squadrons, Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners. Half-Life will win.
Alyx.
It's the only one nominated anywhere else. But shout out, I haven't played it yet, but I've heard Star Wars Squadrons is pretty fantastic.
Is it good?
VR.
Oh, in VR.
Yeah, I've heard it's like the way to play is like it's a good game out of VR, but it's a fantastic game in it. So that's something I want to check out sometime.
I do think Half-Life will win. Don't get me wrong, but I've heard Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners is actually a pretty good game.
Really?
Oh, cool.
Is that VR only, or is that?
Yep.
VR only.
VR only.
Yeah. Innovation and accessibility: Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Grounded, Hyperdot, Last of Us Part 2, and Watch Dogs Legion.
Okay. Someone explain to me how any of these are extra accessible, because I couldn't figure it out.
I recall The Last of Us Part 2 getting a ton of praise for all of its options, for like visual options, for subtitle size and background and control options. I recall it getting a lot of praise for its accessibility.
I went with The Last of Us, but I couldn't think of any specific examples of how these games were accessible.
For me, I haven't played a lot of these, and it sounds a little insensitive, but I guess I'm just not aware of the features that they put in. So for someone that doesn't use them, that is voting for the category, it is a little bit hard because you just don't know. But I'm sure that for the people who do use those accessibility options, they know what the features are specifically that these games have in there, whether that be
shout out to Valhalla,
or difficulty, or all those types of things.
I just recall Last of Us being the one I really heard it talked about when it came out, was how many options there were for accessibility. So I went with that.
Awesome.
Best action game: Doom Eternal, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, Neo 2, and Streets of Rage 4. I think Hades is going to win this one.
Yeah, I'd say Hades or Doom Eternal. I don't even remember what I voted for this one.
This was for action?
Action.
Yeah, my vote is for Doom Eternal, but just because of how big Hades is, I think it would win here. But I think Doom Eternal also real good.
I want to give a quick shout out to Neo 2. That game came and went instantly.
It did.
And it's a shame because it sounds really good. And they also just announced a next-gen version of Neo 1 and 2 that comes with all the DLC coming out next year, and I might pick that up.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I have Neo 1 from PS Plus. Still haven't cracked it out.
Okay, we're getting to some of the big ones again. We have Best Action Adventure Game: Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghost of Tsushima, Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Some recognition for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
I forgot that came out this year.
And it came out last year. And The Last of Us Part 2.
That's why
it came out it's a shame. I want to actually talk about Jedi for a second, because it came out like a week past the cutoff last year. And I think it probably would have won Game of the Year if it was up against last year's crop of Game of the Year: Death Stranding, Control, Sekiro. I think it would have had a lot more presence at the Game Awards than it does this year.
Sekiro won last year, right?
Yeah,
it did.
Okay.
Yeah, not only because more fantastic games came out this year than last year comparatively, but Star Wars Jedi is a damn good game, and I feel like it was just kind of brushed under the rug because it came out last year. So I'm glad it was nominated in this category, but I think that Last of Us Part 2 will win.
It's just more time for people to forget about it.
Yeah, exactly.
These big games, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's great, and I think it's going to be cheap on Black Friday, and I highly recommend Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
My Game of the Year from last year.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
I think The Last of Us will win. I voted for Star Wars because Logan had the same conversation with me this morning, and I felt bad about it. I wanted to give it some recognition, so I voted for it.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Kev?
My vote, Last of Us Part 2. My prediction, going to go with Ghost. Give Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the only time I predict it as a winner, but I'll give it some love there with a prediction that it'll win for action adventure.
It's such a phenomenal game. It would have been my game of the year if it had come out last year, hands down. But I just love The Last of Us and think it's incredible, and it just outpaces it.
It's a rough year.
Rough year because it's well for other reasons.
Rough year for anyone who isn't The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
Best RPG: Final Fantasy VII Remake, Genshin Impact, Persona 5 Royal, Wasteland 3, and Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Shout out! It's one.
Let's
it's one
go.
appearance, and I'm not gonna vote for it.
Final
You're voting
Fantasy
for
VII
Persona.
Remake. I want it to win, and I think it will win. Persona 5 Royal is great, but even though 7 Remake is also a remake, it's not. And Persona 5 Royal, I just don't really think counts, even though it has a bunch of new content. That's how I feel.
My vote goes to Persona 5 Royal. It's my favorite
Shocker.
RPG of all time. JRPG. I think it is one of the quintessential RPGs.
You're wearing the shirt.
I am. Yeah, rocking it. If you're watching the
Nice.
podcast, I had to put it on because we were talking about it. I would also Like a Dragon. Man, if that thing won, I would lose my mind. But Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's
It's
just
win.
the biggest out of all of these. Yeah.
I voted for Like a Dragon
Oh, okay. Cool.
because I wanted to win.
yeah.
But I think Final Fantasy will win.
Yeah, I think so.
Best fighting game. Grand Blue Fantasy versus Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, Street Fighter 5 Champion
Here we go,
Edition,
Zach.
One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, and Under Night in Birth EXE late CLR.
I'll get mine out of the way first. I have no vote because I have no concept of
Yep.
these at all. But
Okay.
my prediction would be Street Fighter 5 Champion Edition. I've heard that.
My
that game's
prediction
really
is
good.
Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate.
Okay, so I was
Zach, here
torn
we
between
go.
Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate and Street Fighter
Okay,
5 Champion
so
Edition.
we made good picks, is what you're saying.
We did.
I think just based on what those additions add to the original, I think I have to give it to Street Fighter 5. That's what I voted for. I think
Okay.
it adds way more. I think Street Fighter 5 was a bad game. I think Champion Edition made it a really good game.
Well,
I think
that's
Mortal
not
Kombat
fair.
11.
That's not fair. That because it improved on something bad, it deserves the win.
But it's really good now, and I think Mortal Kombat 11 went from a decently okay game to still decently okay. I don't think it's super improved upon it.
Gotcha.
I think it just collected everything and put it into one thing.
Package.
I think the Champion Edition, which I haven't gotten a chance to play, I played the base 5 with a lot of stuff still locked, but it did have some updated features. I had a really good time, and I didn't think I would, so I wanted to give it to Street Fighter 5 because I think it slept on a little bit because it had such a rough start.
All right.
Best family game. The best family game of 2020 is not on this list, and that is Sackboy: A Big Adventure. It is by far the best family game that came out this year. The nominees are Animal Crossing: New Horizons, Crash Bandicoot 4: It's About Time, Fall Guys: Ultimate Knockout, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, Minecraft Dungeons, and Paper Mario: The Origami King. 4 out of 6 of those are single player. Animal Crossing's multiplayer sucks, and then there's Minecraft Dungeons. So I honestly didn't know what to vote for. I was honestly disappointed that Sackboy wasn't on this list because it has fantastic co-op. It's adorable. It's accessible. Like if you have a skilled player and a not so skilled player, you can easily get through it. It's the best family game of the year. So that's my vote. My write-in vote is for Sackboy, and I
Not
think
allowed.
Animal Crossing will win.
All right. I voted for Animal Crossing just because I wanted to win something. I think it deserves an award. It should be this one. I think it's probably going to win it too.
Yeah, my Animal Crossing. Speaking of multiplayer, there's a category a little bit later that we can talk about. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Best sim strategy game. I think this is a really weird category because you have Gears Tactics going up against Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
Sim,
What is this
sim and
category?
strategy are not. I don't
Not
know.
the same thing.
There's some similarities, but it's also very different.
But I think Flight Simulator will win.
Yeah.
And
I voted for Flight Simulator. Yep.
Yeah, my vote was for Flight Simulator. I think it will win, but I've heard very good things about Crusader Kings from some friends.
Yes,
who played
me too.
It. So,
Yeah.
I saw it as a fight between Flight Simulator and Crusader Kings for prediction, but I went with Flight Simulator.
Best sports/racing game: Dirt 5, Formula 1 2020, FIFA 21, NBA 2K21, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Pro Skater.
Yeah,
I voted for Dirt 5
Yeah.
because I like the Dirt franchise. I think Pro Skater will win it. I was torn between the two.
Yeah, I decided to give a vote to Dirt 5.
Let's go.
People like those games, and I didn't want to
Yeah.
give it to any of the other sports games, but I think Pro Skater will win by far.
I forgot there was a Dirt 5.
It just came out.
I know, yeah.
On the same day as Xbox, right? Pretty sure it came out that day.
Yeah, wasn't it a launch title or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably.
And then the last category we're going to talk about, best multiplayer game. The nominees are Animal Crossing New Horizons, Among Us, Call of Duty, Warzone, Fall Guys, Ultimate Knockout, and Valorant. I just want to say Animal Crossing's multiplayer sucks.
It's terrible. It's really
It's like
Not
the
gonna win
worst
the
part of
category.
that game. It is such a pain in the butt to visit anyone's islands, to do anything. Everything comes screeching to a halt when anyone flies in or out. It's laggy, drop connections. If a connection is dropped, you lose everything you got on that island. The multiplayer is straight up bad.
Yeah, that was one of the
It has
only
local
ones
multiplayer.
where I saw it in that category and I was just like, that should not be there. Like most of the other categories, I was fine with them. Maybe a couple of little omissions, but Animal Crossing for multiplayer was like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Really weird.
Fall Guys. I think Fall Guys is going to win this one.
Yep. I voted Fall Guys. I'd give it to Fall Guys.
My vote was for Fall Guys, but I'm gonna predict Among Us.
Yeah.
It could go either way in my head.
I think it has, at least as of now, it has more legs. You know, I think people are talking about it a little bit more.
Yeah, it came in popularity a little after Fall Guys, so it still has a bit of a leg up.
So that's why I predict it. But Fall Guys, yeah, is my vote.
All right, and that is the last category we're going to talk about. Those are our lengthy Game Awards predictions. In a few weeks, we will know all the answers.
Yep.
It'll be
One of us is going to be 100% correct.
Yeah, and this entire segment will be completely worthless in a couple of weeks when all the results are out.
Yep.
I love that.
Good stuff.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about what we've been playing. For me, it's nothing because it's just Yakuza, and I already talked about that.
Yep.
So I got nothing
For a little bit, yep.
Before Logan gets into his laundry list of stuff that he's played and beaten, Zach, what have you been up to?
Zach has played not a lot. Okay, so I played like another hour of the Dragon Quest XI demo. I got my first party member, so that's all good.
Still a good game. Still a good game.
It's still a good game.
Cool.
I mean, the quality doesn't look very like it's
not noticeably
almost
worse.
identical, yeah, to the original version. So that's good. That's what I was worried about the most. And then after that, I played some more of the post game of Ghost of Tsushima because I'm still not done with that game yet. There was a lot of side stuff I wanted to dive back into before I moved on. I did another complete tale of one of the side characters, so I thought that was super cool. I liked it a lot. Did a little bit more of the multiplayer with Logan. We dived into some of the harder difficulty stuff, but that was about it. We can move on to Logan. I know he's got a long list of stuff he needs to get through. So,
Man.
I do. I'm going to start with a rapid fire round of stuff I don't have that much to say. Ghost of Tsushima, I love that the harder difficulties actually change up the levels a little bit. It's not just harder enemies. Like there's actually some new objectives to do. So I think that's really
parkour.
Cool. Monster Hunter World, we beat one of the final optional quests in the game, and then literally every NPC in both villages wanted to talk to us. Like 40
It was
exclamation
astounding.
points popped up.
They all
on
love
the
you
screen.
now?
We had to
like,
talk
it
to
was so
40
awesome.
people.
Yeah,
I love you.
that was crazy.
And they also did the same thing.
Oh,
Super Mario Sunshine. I hit a little bit of a wall on the Pianta Village. I think some of the levels there are not great.
That's it's technically the last one. Have you been skipping around?
Yeah, I've been skipping around a little bit. So I still need to go finish off the hotel.
How many in the hotel have you done? Because those are pretty.
I'm
infamous.
on the fifth one, and I've actually not struggled that much.
Okay.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the hotel.
You enjoyed
the
having to deal with the casino and like spraying the water on that stuff? Have you done
on the shine? That was really annoying. Spraying the water on the shine was super obnoxious. Yeah. I hated that.
That's not
great.
Yeah.
F-Zero GX. It's the 30th anniversary of F-Zero today. So I've been playing some GX. It's amazing. Same director as the Yakuza series and the Super Monkey Ball series. What a legend.
What a great guy.
What a legendary man.
what a great dude.
I adore that game and would like to talk about it more in the future. But F-Zero GX is great. Finished Pikmin 3 on Wii U. I think that game is delightful. The final boss is extremely stressful. Oh my god. It basically chases you through a cave for like 45 minutes while you're solving puzzles and all. It is intense. It's the closest feeling I've had to the Tyrant from Resident Evil 2 since I played that with Zach. It is frightening. But really fun, really great game. Took me about 9 or 10 hours to beat.
Okay.
Really enjoyed the campaign. Okay, so those are my rapid fire.
Okay.
I have 4 games I want to talk a little bit more about.
Here we go.
Because they're all more current. So, Immortals Phoenix Rising. I tried out the demo on Google Stadia.
Nice.
Also played Google Stadia. It ran fine for me when I sat near my router, so that was fine. But the game is really cool. It wears its Breath of the Wild influence shamelessly. Like it is just straight up influenced by Breath of the Wild. The stamina, climb anything, just so much. Instead of campfires, there's these pots where you brew potions. It's just all the same. But it's good. Okay. Breath of the Wild is good. So this is good. And the comparison, I was telling Kevin about this a little bit. It's the open world Kid Icarus sequel that I'll never get. And that has me sold on it because I adore Kid Icarus Uprising. It is one of my favorite games of all time. You play as this winged angel. In this one, it's like a demigod, I think, who has a bow and arrow. And the tone is like really funny and quirky and self-aware and breaks the fourth wall. And both games have that. And this one, Prometheus and Zeus are basically the narrators, and they're kind of arguing over like what actually happened. So like there's multiple narrations going on at one time, and it's like really funny and entertaining dialogue while you're fighting. And yeah, it's just really cool. And Kid Icarus is great. And this reminded me a lot of it when I was playing. So I think I'm going to play this game at some point. Probably not at launch, but at some point after it releases, I'm going to pick it up.
Okay. Yeah, that came out of left field for me. I didn't even realize you were thinking about it. And then it's just like, I'm playing this at some point. I'm like, all right.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Just don't play it on Switch.
I will play it on PS5. I will absolutely play it on PS5. So yeah, that's now a game I'm looking forward to that's coming out soon. So I'm excited about that. It has a frame rate mode and a performance mode, and I'm excited to play it at 60 frames per second because that's just where I'm at now in my life.
That's where my life is.
So that'll be cool. Sackboy, I've already alluded to it a few times. That game is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite platformers of all time. I'm playing it through with my girlfriend, and I just think it is so great. There has not been a bad level. Every level just consistently keeps mixing it up. There's a grappling hook, which is amazing. It's like the hook shot from Zelda, and you can just swing all around stuff with it too. So it's super cool. Some of my favorite levels, there's these levels where you need two people to play. You need a friend to play these bonus levels. And some of the puzzles in there are just so clever and creative. Like there's this one mechanic where you have this ball of light, and the ball of light reveals a hidden path. It's similar to something I think is in like Galaxy, or 3D World. I can't remember. But basically, you get separated from your partner, and one person's above and one person's below, and you have to like walk at the same time because one person's generating the path, and you can just screw over your partner. So just really, really clever puzzles and platforming with two people. The boss fights are cool. The soundtrack is phenomenal. There's that pop music level I told you about last week. There's one of those in every world, and it's just awesome. And then sometimes there's random pop songs that are like not the actual version, like not actually a famous pop singer singing, but like Take On Me, the second major PlayStation game it's appeared in this year. Take On Me is just in the game, but it's in this water level, so it's like a weird watery version of Take On Me with no vocals. It's like violins, and it's like they just made this and it's in there, and if you recognize it, you're like, that's really cool and random. But it's just so cool. I don't know why. I'm into it. Yeah, it is, but I like it. And the collectibles are awesome. There are reasons to go back into each level, but it doesn't overwhelm you with collectibles. I just love it. I'm through 3 worlds. It looks like there's 2 worlds to go. And I think we played for like 10 hours so far.
Okay, so a pretty meaty experience.
Yeah, but I can't recommend it enough. It's one of my favorite games this year so far. Sackboy is so good. Yeah, and I did not expect it to be as phenomenal as it is. Like it's the best non-Nintendo platformer I've ever played for sure. That and Astrobot VR are the two best ever. Speaking of Astrobot, I finished and platinumed Astro's Playroom, my first platinum of all time.
First platinum ever. And you got a video of it.
It feels good. It was a pretty easy platinum to get, but it was a lot of fun. I don't have too much new to say about it, except I still love the adaptive triggers on the PS5, like I talked about last week. I think those are super cool. This game, it's really phenomenal. The final boss it's incredible. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a huge nod to PlayStation. The final boss is so cool. The collectibles and the references are just so consistent and charming throughout. Like, if they capitalize on it and make just a full feature game, not to show something off, right? Like Astro is always to show something off. You have the playroom, on when VR came out at first to show it off. You have VR, which really defined platforming in VR. Now you have this to show off the controller. Like, they should just make a game just to make a game starring Astrobot, just a fully fledged platformer, and it would be fantastic. They've really got something great there. So I really like that. There's these time trial challenges I've been going back to. I'm just trying to improve my time on the world ranking leaderboards, which is really cool. So yeah, that game is great, and easily the behind Wii Sports, it's the best pack-in title ever. Like, it's so great. Some people are saying it's the best pack-in title of all time. I think Wii Sports still has it beat because that was just an unparalleled experience, I think, when we all played Wii Sports for the first time.
I would agree.
But yeah, this is really good, and it does prove the controller and the system, and it's just so charming. I also beat Spider-Man. I beat Miles Morales. It took me 7 hours, and I really liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't love it as much as I loved the first one. And I think the reason is the first one has so many like personal moments. I feel like Peter is out of the suit a lot, whether it's in the lab or with MJ or at Feast, the charity that he works for with.
And this is the old Peter we're talking about, not the new Peter.
New Peter's not there. Only old Peter.
Yeah.
I just feel like we really lived both sides of his life in the original Spider-Man. And I feel like to make this a 7 to 8 hour game, all that stuff was cut. There's only a few scenes where you actually play as Miles out of the suit and really get a feel for what his life is like and learn about that side of him. Most of the story is focused on what's going on with this evil corporation and the villains and how is Miles going to stop them. And it's still a very good story, has some good twists and some good character moments for sure. But I felt like it was missing some of those personal moments that I really, really love and remember from the first game. And that's just part of it being shorter. Like, it makes sense. It's not a big knock against the game. It's Miles, no pun intended, Miles better than the Spider-Man DLC, which I thought was mediocre. Like, it's a great game. I really like it. I recommend playing it. Took me 7 hours to beat. The combat is fantastic. His Venom powers I talked about last week are awesome. They are so much fun. I think the combat is definitely better in this game than in the first game, which is what you want to see in a sequel like this. And they did set some stuff up with Miles' story. I'm curious to see how big of a part he is in Spider-Man 2. I really, really hope that Peter and Miles are both playable. Like, I hope they split the campaign in Spider-Man 2, and you kind of have both of these characters really take center stage instead of him being a side character again like he was in the first game. Because, I mean, he deserves to have main billing in a Spider-Man game after this spinoff. He's a great character. I talked about his performance a little bit earlier. He's great voice acting. But yeah, I really enjoyed it overall. But I feel like it literally like I do about Lost Legacy. Like, it's good. It's very, very good, but it doesn't live up to the main series for me, but it's still worth playing.
How about for the next game, it's split 3 ways between Miles, Peter, and old Peter.
I saw that coming.
I did not know where you were going with that. A lot.
I mean, I could have said Joseph St. Cloud.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were
going. Split 4 ways.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, good that at least the main campaign is solid. Knowing that it is going to be a little bit shorter of an experience, and you don't get those moments. At least the core there is still good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's worth playing, even on a PS4. Like, it's worth picking up and playing.
What's the conversation around the PS4 version? Is it just the load screen?
Load times are slow. Yeah,
yeah. I can live with that.
But it's a lot of fun. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm knocking on the game because I do really like it. I love Miles. See, I think that's part of the reason is I love Miles in this game. I think he's a great character, but I just wanted more. I wanted more of him and not just of Spider-Man. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where the series goes from here. There was also a post-credit scene which sets up Spider-Man 2 similarly to the post-credit scene in the first Spider-Man. So the series is definitely still going places, and I'm excited to see Miles be a bigger part of it now that he's kind of had his own little journey to establish himself as Spider-Man in New York.
Nice.
Oh, I have actually one big nitpick.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying another game. Okay. All right.
No
nitpick.
Huge nitpick about Spider-Man. No one else is talking about this, but it bugs me to no end. So Peter Parker leaves, right? He leaves New York, and Miles has to defend New York alone. That is the setup of this game. Everybody knows it's the other Spider-Man. It's like the other Sonic in Sonic Forces. Everyone knows. It's like you're fighting this generic wave of enemies, and they're like, you can't beat us. You're not the real Spider-Man. And it's like, how can you tell? I'm a dude in a Spider-Man suit.
Well, it's
how
like,
do you know?
in the first game, you're swapping suits all the time.
Yeah, I wore 20 different suits throughout
Like,
that game. You can never tell.
I wore a bag on my head, and you think I'm the real Spider-Man?
And like Miles, he has a smaller frame for sure than Peter.
Not anymore, he doesn't,
dude.
compared to the newer Peter.
Yeah, that's true.
That
Are
just
they the
rip
same
his head
frame?
off. No, they are not, and it looks weird. It doesn't work. But it just, if you are a thug who has never fought Spider-Man before, there is no logical way you would know that it's not the same Spider-Man you're fighting. It just didn't work for me, and it happens all the time. They're like Miles will show up in his suit for a mission, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's you." I'm like, how do you know which one I am before I've even spoken a word? It doesn't make sense. It's a very minor thing that doesn't detract from it at all. I just thought it was funny, and it reminded me of Sonic Forces.
Oh God,
So,
Sonic
I thought
Forces,
I'd
the other Sonic. Jeez,
You were the only person who has
awful.
ever been reminded of Sonic Forces from Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yeah. Yeah. But I really enjoyed all three games that I played on PS5. Sackboy is my favorite far and away. I adore that game. And then Astro, and then Spider-Man. But they're all great. I recommend all three of them. Definitely a strong launch lineup, even though two of them are on PS4. Just great stuff to play if you have a PS5.
If that's a big if.
Yeah,
If
it
you
is
have
big.
PS5, man. I still see all these people trying to get them. Just like, oh, when's the next restock? Apparently, like Walmart or something's gonna restock, and I'm just like, man, that sounds awful. Having to deal with that. I'm just waiting until I could get one easily. Is my thought process now.
Yeah.
Seems like a rough time out there. All right, did we get through them all? We get through all the games
We did.
played? All right.
We did.
Whew.
Yeah, that was a lot. Flashbacks to Zach's his just history of the couple of months where he was
hiatus.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
We have run on long enough. Final thoughts before we wrap this up.
Last
I-
thought on Spider-Man.
Yep.
If
The other
the
Spider-Man
campaign
or
is short,
the real
the other
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Okay. Cool.
The campaign is really short, 7 hours, like I said, but there's a ton of side stuff to do. So if you could easily spend probably 20 hours doing all the side stuff if you wanted to. So there's a lot of content there. I don't know how much of it I'm going to do, but if you're wondering about the $50 price tag, if it's worth it for you, there is a ton of side stuff. It litters the map with stuff to collect, just like the original, and side stories that I've heard are meaningful. So yeah, there's a lot to do in it.
Okay.
All right. Zach?
I predict that they will announce the release date for Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 at the Game Awards for December 2021.
For December 2020.
Okay.
It's coming out. It's out.
Next month. This month.
Okay. What a prediction. Man, if that comes true,
If I'm right,
big plays.
If I'm right, you will all worship me. But if I'm wrong, then who cares?
Okay. I'll be waiting for it.
Exactly.
I'll be waiting for it during the Game Awards.
Oh yeah, me too.
All right, but that is going to do it for us on this week's episode of OD Games. We're here on Fridays on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other podcast streaming services that you may use. The video podcast is on YouTube, on the OD Games YouTube page, so you can watch us there as well. We also have a Twitch page, OD Games, a Twitter, OD Games as well. You can find us on there. You can send an email to odgamescast@gmail.com. For Logan and Zach, I'm Kevin. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.